Hello. In this video, we will look at how to requeue samples to an earlier step of the workflow within the Clarity LIMS interface. This is a lab manager or system administrator only functionality. If a lab scientist wants to requeue samples to an earlier step, they can initiate the process by first escalating samples for review. There's a training video in the same section that shows you how to do that. For a lab manager, they can requeue samples in two scenarios, and we'll be showing both scenarios in this training video. The first one is when samples have been escalated for review by a researcher or lab scientist. In the screen, I'm seeing that Technician Joe has requested review of samples during the bioanalyzer QC step. I can click onto this requested review and view the result that has been recorded by Joe. After seeing the sample failing status and their QC result, I am now able to select samples that I want to requeue and requeue them to an earlier step by clicking on this drop-down and selecting Rework from an earlier step. After I click on Rework from an earlier step, I will see the specific history for that particular sample and choose one particular step to rework or requeue the samples to. If I want to rework it to the repair end step, I can just select step 2 here and click OK. Due to the fact that these samples at currently the same stage might have different history attached to them, you will not be able to apply a common rework from previous step to all the samples. Instead, you will need to requeue the samples to their individual earlier step one by one. Now I have specified requeue to repair end step for 5 of these samples and the mRNA purification step for 1 of them. I can now click Finish Review, and those 5 samples will be available for repair ends again. Let's look at the queue view of repair ends TruSeq RNA from the lab view. By clicking into the queue view, I can see there are 5 samples that are currently waiting and have been in this queue for a very short period of time, and those are the samples that I have just requeued from the escalation for review page. The other scenario will be for Lab Manager to directly rework sample to an earlier step on the Assign Next Steps page. Again, this will only be available when the login person is a Lab Manager or System Administrator. From this list, I can choose rework from an earlier step for individual samples, and once again LIMS will know what steps the sample has gone through and let you choose a step that has already happened for that particular sample. In this case, I would choose fragment DNA, and I will do the same for the remaining of the samples. After this, I can simply hit Finish Step, and now these samples will be requeued back to the fragment DNA step. As I go into the fragment DNA queue view, I should now see samples having a 0-minute waiting time, which are the 4 samples that I have just requeued into this step. This is how, as a lab manager or system administrator, you can requeue samples to an earlier step of the workflow on the sample review page or Assign Next Steps page. Keep in mind that if you need to requeue samples that are already made into pools, you will first need to requeue the current pool back to the pooling step, and then take the samples from that step and requeue it further up.